I've come to believe that one of the most neglected maintenance items on these M113 and M112 engines is right here, folks. It's the power steering fluid. Never gets changed. Maybe it's because this is kind of out of sight, out of mind, sticking down in here in the front of the engine. And I know some people probably pull the cap off from time to time and look at the power steering fluid and think, oh, all is fine. But I'm going to be so bold as to say, I think people just don't want to do it. They don't want to pay for it. And there's a couple videos on YouTube shows a guy just sucking some old fluid and putting some new fluid in saying, well, it's good. It's not. One of the reasons for power steering system failure in these cars is particulates in the fluid. Ruins the pump, ruins the steering mechanism. And if you just neglect this, you're going to pay the price, and it's going to be a lot more expensive than doing a fluid and filter change on these engines. Some of you may say, well, I don't see any filter in there. Oh, but there is. Now let's pull this air intake hose off. This will give you a better look at it. So this is the return hose going into this reservoir, and down below is the pump. To do this job properly, you need to literally flush the system with new fluid, and then, believe it or not, the filter is inside this tank and you have to replace the tank. Let me show you what's in my kit that's going to make this job a lot easier if you choose to do it yourself. First off, you're going to receive 2 liters of the proper MB specification power steering fluid. Do not use any old power steering fluid. Do not use Prestone. Do not go to any old auto parts store and say, I just need power steering fluid. You need to have the correct power steering fluid. It takes about 1.33 liters to do the flush, so you will have extra left over for future use. You're going to get a pair of nitrile gloves, of course, because this is a messy job, let me tell you. All right, then you're going to get a new reservoir, just like you see here, and along with that reservoir will come a correct O-ring that you'll need to use to install the new reservoir to the top of the pump. I'm going to include some extras to make this a little bit easier. I'm going to give you some plastic bags and zip ties. You can actually put hoses that are dripping in these plastic bags to catch drips and to keep them from getting on your garage floor or in your engine compartment. I'm going to provide a silicone plug so you can plug off the reservoir so it won't be leaking when you're doing the flushing process. And I'll give you a hose extension that will allow you to put this into a bottle and make it easier to prevent spills when you're going through the flushing process. And then I'm going to give you this little syringe with a hose attachment that allows you to go down inside the reservoir and suck all the old fluid out before you begin the procedure. Now in my deluxe kit, I'm going to include something extra. This is a magnetic filter, which is a lot more efficient than the filter down inside this tank. It has a magnet in it that will attract metallic particles and keep them from getting into the reservoir. This will be installed in the return hose. It's a matter of shortening the hose and installing this with the new clamps. Now in the standard kit, this will not be included. You'll just be relying on the filter inside the tank, but I highly recommend that you install this magnetic inline filter. So that's what's included. It's a very complete kit for the DIY mechanic, and if you're interested in doing this yourself, it will come with complete video instructions. You want to make sure you get as much fluid out of this tank as possible because you don't want a lot of spillage when you remove it from the top of the power steering pump. Take the tube and work it around. Make sure it gets all the way down in the bottom. You'll feel a little catch down there. And then go ahead and suck. The cleaner you can do this job, the more time you're going to save in cleanup. Now I do include this green plug for plugging off the reservoir tank, but you don't really need to use that now because the tank's empty. But you will be using this after you install the new tank and start the flushing procedure. Like that, and then I'm going to go ahead and fill up the reservoir. Keep an eye on the level when you're doing this. Use a funnel. I know everybody thinks they can pour this in. Notice I'm using the correct green power steering fluid that I include in the kit You don't want to use anything that you get from your local auto parts store unless it's to Mercedes spec. If you have the room, I like to use an old gallon jug like this. You'll be flushing about 1.3 to 1.5 liters of fluid out of the system. If you don't have room for a gallon, maybe get a 2 liter and then cut an X in it like this. This will help to keep the hose from flying out while you're doing the flush. Okay, I have my funnel and fluid ready. I'm going to tell my helper, go ahead and start turning the wheel all the way to the right and all the way to the left. Okay, you can see it's still kind of dirty. Now remember, this fluid's green, so it's not going to run clear here. But I think now you can see the brown cast has gone away, and what you're seeing in the hose now is green. Okay, we can stop. If you don't have my deluxe kit, you just go ahead and hook up the hose, and you're done. I know that some people are surprised to hear there's a filter inside here. And if you look down through the hole, you don't see anything. So I decided to cut this apart so I can show you. It's a rather extensive filter screen which filters the return fuel. If you look here, this fine screen goes all the way around the inside of this tank here, and it's fairly fine. Since I want to prolong the life of my power steering, I'm going to install a magnetic filter in line with the return hose, and I'm going to offer that as a deluxe kit if you want to do the same. There is a flow direction. See that? The arrow? Make sure that you get that arrow going the right direction. Now, this is return fuel, so it's coming back into the tank. So I want the arrow pointing towards the firewall. I'll hook this hose up. I'm going to probably cut it just slightly long, maybe right there. I can always recut it because I want this to drop down a little bit. I don't want it up here. Okay, there you go. There it is, right there. Look at that. Now, I'm just going to tighten up the clamps. I'll double check and fill any fluid I need to bring that up to that second mark on a cold engine, and I'm done. One of the reasons I like the magnetic filter is when I planned to change the fluid in 40,000 miles, I believe every 40,000 miles you should do this, I won't have to change the tank. I'm just going to change the magnetic filter, and then every 80,000 miles, every second change, I'll go ahead and change the tank as well. But this service here, folks, can really extend the service life of your power steering in your M112 and M113 engine. The fluid and filter change was demonstrated on a W220 chassis. Some other chassis you're going to have to do a little bit more to reroute that magnetic filter. This is a 500E W211 chassis, and you can see the return hoses coming up from down below. It may require that you go out and get additional hose and try to route the filter further away. I cannot guarantee the magnetic filter is going to fit on all models that use the M112 and M113 engine. This is an M112 six-cylinder in a C240, and as with most six-cylinders, you've got a little more room to work up front. And you can see here that you're not going to have a problem getting that magnetic filter in line with this return hose if you want to install it in this model. Most of the V6s have room like this. You can see the tank's the same, location is the same, procedure in changing out the tank and doing the flush is exactly the same as in the V8 engines.